During the movie, we were sharing a bag of minstrels, you know, those big chocolate things. The passing of the bag happened to occur during a jump scare moment in the movie. One of my friends went, "Bah!" The minstrels shot out in all directions from the bag and they started hitting people, and it caused mass terror in the audience. They were just freaking out, panicking and yelling and screaming. I got to try movies that I normally wouldn't even entertain, you know, because I wouldn't even know about them. So I was more of a popcorn, mainstream movie guy before the 90s. One of them, the film's called My Life. A guy slowly dying of cancer. Michael Keaton and Nicole Kidman. It was the kind of film you couldn't have sold to me for £1 million when I was a kid. I'd have just, I'm not going to watch that, it looks depressing and boring, you know, I'd have just rejected it. But I found myself strangely compelled with this film. Now, the reason why this is an interesting story, because it was the first time I actually cried in a cinema. Yeah, I actually did. And this was my excuse. The cinema, it was mostly a female audience, late teens, early 20s, maybe one or two other guys in there with their girlfriends. I was in there alone. It was mostly girls. And when the hero starts to die at the end, they're all crying. The girls are crying. And the atmosphere was just overwhelming emotional grief. The whole cinema was just filled with this crying energy. And I just got caught up into it. I welled up and I found myself crying in the cinema. I mean, it's like, wow, an amazing experience for me, because I grew up in kind of, although it was on the surface a very nice looking neighbourhood with big houses and everybody had nice cars and everybody had 2 kids and front gardens and back gardens and extensions on the houses. It looked like, it wasn't a rich area. It was actually a less than middle level area, but it looked rich. Because it was in a dodgy area. It just looked very nice, but it was a rough area full of quite rough people who just happened to have big houses and the appearance of civility. So I grew up learning you just don't show weak emotions like crying. Definitely not. And the same guy who was a big fan of, say, the Rocky films and Total Recall would never cry in the cinema. And even if he did, he'd never admit it. So I watched this film, My Life, and I found myself crying during the movie. Because it was nothing but girls crying in there, I kind of felt that was my justification. That was the reason I cried at a movie. Anyway, on the subject of humour and humorous cinema experiences, I went to see a film that wasn't humorous at all. I went with 2 of my buddies, and it was called Jacob's Ladder. Tim Robbins, the guy from Shawshank Andy Dufresne. It was like a psychological slight horror of a guy who comes back traumatised from Vietnam and he can't tell what's reality. He has like his real life where he's dying in Vietnam and he imagines this life that's not real. And there's demons and what have you, and there's jump scare type moments. I remember the exact seat where I was sitting in the cinema at the time, and I was at the wall to my right hand side, and 2 of my friends were sitting to the left of me. Now, we had this habit of always having a spare seat between us. 2 reasons for this, by the way. One, guys who are in my generation were 2 guys sitting together. People would automatically assume, they're gay. No guy who's straight in the area where I came from wanted to be thought of as gay. So you'd always leave a space between you and your buddy. There's 3 of us. But we had enough room, so we were able to do this. And the other reason for having the space between the seats is because we were all completely selfish and we all wanted an armrest to ourselves. At least the cinemas at that time, the armrests were pretty narrow. I think most cinemas still are. I'm fairly big anyway, so I like to have the arm space. To stop me and my friends quarrelling over who got to put their arm on the armrest, it was a good idea to have some extra space. Totally not important, just a bit of a sideline there. During the movie, we were sharing a bag of minstrels, you know, those chocolatey, like big Smarties, big chocolate things. Cinema treats were expensive, we didn't have a lot of money, so we were sharing one bag of minstrels, basically passing the bag between us, and we had to stretch over to pass the bag. And the passing of the bag happened to occur during a jump scare moment in the movie. And one of my friends, who was the one in the middle, who was receiving the bag of minstrels at that moment, went, "Ah!" He panicked because of the jump scare. The minstrels shot out in all directions from the bag, and they started hitting people in the audience. Just that critical moment, and it caused mass terror in the audience. They were just freaking out, panicking and yelling and screaming, and I'm sort of against the wall looking back thinking, what the hell is happening? And it was like a total freak out, one of those group moments that everybody just gets caught up in. And because I was against the wall, I guess I had just a bit of distance, a bit of space from it. I wasn't caught up in it. I think, what the hell's going on? Bizarre. But anyway, other extreme audience reactions, I may have mentioned it in one of my other videos, Rocky IV, where everyone's chanting during the fight, Rocky, Rocky. It was like being in the audience. That was very exhilarating, very exciting. And here's a not so good thing. Not a very big cinema in Bolton Town Centre. A rough crowd. And this was during a film, I don't even know why I went to see it. I guess it's because I liked the first one. Gremlins 2. Not a good movie. Gremlins 1? Yes. Gremlins 2? To be avoided, really. Now, there's a scene in Gremlins 2 where they pretend something goes wrong with the cinema projector. So the actual movie stops at this point, and the cinema lights, they come back on, and the screen goes blank. It's a gag. Basically, it's a gag. And after, I don't know how many seconds, it probably seems like a longer time because everyone's waiting, wondering what the hell's going on, you see a silhouette of a gremlin run across the screen, and then Paul Hogan, the big wrestler guy, appears. Hulk Hogan, the wrestler, not Paul Hogan. Paul Hogan is the Crocodile Dundee guy. Hey, projectionist, put back on the movie, or something like that, and then the movie resumes. It's supposed to be a gimmick, right? And it completely backfired in the Bolton cinema. When the lights came back on, people started groaning, then they started yelling and complaining, we want our money back, we pay our money to come watch it. It really just caused a massive disturbance, and it caused so much upset. Even when the gremlin silhouette ran across the screen, most of them didn't get it. They were still yelling and It was one of those moments where I just felt, I don't belong here. I probably should have just got up and left because the movie wasn't worth sitting through. Let's see if I can find... Okay, not a group cinema experience, but when I first saw Gladiator. You know, I was so excited about seeing Gladiator. I'd just seen these TV clips, and I really wanted to see this movie very, very strongly. At that time, I was between jobs. I think it was May 2000. The year 2000, was it? Yeah. I left the house. I wanted to catch the 2 o'clock showing, you know, the earliest one you possibly could as soon as it was released. And I think it was a Thursday. And I didn't have a car at the time. Didn't even have a driving licence. I was like 27 years old. I went to the bus stop, and there was a sign on the bus stop, all buses cancelled for today. Like, what? How am I going to... Oh, my God, no. I literally just set off running as fast as I could. Now, at that time, yes, I used to exercise a lot. I was in good shape. But it was probably about 2.5 miles to the cinema. And I almost sprinted the whole distance. Crazy. I was so worried about missing the beginning of Gladiator that I literally went flat out all the way to the cinema and managed to buy the tickets while catching my breath, hurried in, and the instant I sat down, the movie started. Just made it. And the cinema was almost empty, and I got a front row seat. I was still trying to catch my breath, but I could tell from the moment you see Maximus's hand going through the wheat in the wheat field that this is special. It was a profoundly emotional experience for me. I was totally overwhelmed with emotion and loved every moment of it. I just thought it was a complete masterpiece. I loved it so much that I went to see it 7 times, which sounds extreme, because the most I'd ever been to see a movie before was maybe 2 or 3 times, usually with different friends if it was a film I really liked. Went to see it 7 times. But part of the reason for that is it was stayed in the cinema from May until September, so I got the chance to go back and watch the same movie 7 times. For a long time that stayed my #1 favourite film. Hi everyone, my name is Neil Carpenter. I am the computer games developer who made Lord Temin's Fortress. You can see the description below. If you like this video, please subscribe or like. Thank you. Have a great day.